time someone searches for the best movies in history, the internet spits out the same cliches. The rankings of IMDb, Letterboxd, or Film Affinity. And while there are absolute truths like The Godfather, most are not even close to being the best. The inertia of consensus and the tyranny of the algorithm have created a mirage, leaving 90% of the true artistic peaks completely out. The miracles of cinema that truly have the power to change your life remain completely invisible to the general public. That is why this video is not a predictable top 10 or a list of friendly recommendations. Today, you are going to discover a new world. 10 absolute masterpieces of an unquestionable historical level that dwell in the shadows waiting to be discovered. The Red Circle is the greatest heist movie of all time, but its heart goes much further. Jean-Pierre Melville films crime as if it were a mass, with a geometric perfection that grips you out of pure magnetism. A thief recently released from prison, a fugitive killer, and an alcoholic ex-cop united by the Red Circle of Destiny crosspaths to pull off the perfect heist at an impregnable jewelry store. This gives rise to one of the most flawless scenes in the history of cinema. The central heist sequence lasts a full half hour in absolute silence. 30 minutes where you only hear metal, held breaths, and the suffocating weight of danger. Melville trusts his own camera so much that he needs no fireworks or absurd twists to grab you by the throat and keep you from blinking. In this work, crime is neither ambition nor materialism. There is no cynicism like in American film noir. Here, the characters have a code of honor and a higher cause that is more important than money and their own lives. Alain Delon, with his legendary trench coat and a gaze that cuts through ice, possesses an aura and magnetism that, simply put, no actor has ever matched. The only bad thing about this film is that, after watching it, there is no going back. Modern cinema, with its ridiculous irony, its ugliness, and its spiritual emptiness, will seem like trash compared to the gods of European cinema. If you think Interstellar or Dune represent the limit of science fiction, it is because you do not know the most ambitious, extreme, and demented film ever made. On the Silver Globe is a cosmic odyssey so savage that it nearly destroyed the sanity of its director, Andrzej Żuławski. A group of astronauts flees a ruined Earth to start from scratch on a virgin planet. But what begins as a utopia quickly degenerates into a tribal nightmare, a bloody religion, and absolute primitive savagery. Visually, it is a feverish madness. The camera moves as if possessed. The actors perform on the verge of mental collapse, and the sets have such a colossal scale that they ridicule any modern digital effect. You might wonder how it was possible to finance such a delirium. To understand it, you have to travel back to the Poland of the 70s. The communist government, which at the time blindly trusted the director, granted him a titanic budget, turning the film into the largest blockbuster in the country's history. This is something that, simply, will never happen again. It seemed that communism, for the first time, would provide something positive. But nothing could be further from the truth. The regime, terrified by the subversive power and the philosophical weight of the work, ordered the shooting to stop when it was at 80%. They destroyed the sets, burned the costumes, and confiscated the footage. It was an attempted artistic assassination. 10 years later, following the fall of the Soviet bloc, Żuławski recovered the surviving negatives and filled in the missing scenes by filming the streets of Warsaw while explaining, with his own voice, what the dictatorship had stolen from us. The result is a wounded, broken masterpiece, yet with a devastating spiritual force. Watching this film is witnessing a miracle that survived its own execution. After the madness of the previous spot, it is time to come back down to earth with one of the purest, most human, and melancholic works this art form has ever given us. Alice in the Cities follows the story of Philip, a German journalist bogged down in a deep existential crisis, as he travels through a soulless and empty United States. His life completely changes when, by a twist of fate at an airport, he is forced to take charge of Alice, a 9-year-old girl whose mother has disappeared. Together, they embark on an impromptu journey across Europe to find the little girl's grandmother, with no more clues than an old photograph of a nameless house. What in the hands of Hollywood would have been a tear-jerking and commercial drama, here becomes pure visual poetry. Wenders portrays urban loneliness and the loss of identity through the analog photography of a Polaroid. The chemistry between the two protagonists is so real, honest, and far from childish cliches that it completely disarms you. A hypnotic road movie that does not seek cheap tears, but rather reminds you of the beauty of chance encounters and the weight of nostalgia. Cinema with a soul, the kind that embraces your chest and leaves an indelible mark. Opening night chronicles the disintegration of Myrtle Gordon, a celebrated stage actress facing the abyss of aging while rehearsing her latest play. Her reality shatters entirely when she witnesses the accidental death of a young fan obsessed with her. From that trauma onward, the ghost of the girl and the panic of passing time become entangled with the script she must perform, blurring the boundary between the stage and life. Cassavetes films this free fall without a single trace of artifice or aesthetic compassion. His suffocating and nervous camera chases sweaty faces, lost gazes, and the refuge of alcohol, seeking to capture truth in its purest and most violent state. The most incredible thing of all is that every scene feels improvised because of how realistic it is, and yet everything was obsessively measured. The actor had zero margin for error. Every movement, every facial gesture was calculated by the director and supported by an ultra-detailed 200-page script. At the center of this relentless mechanism shines Gina Rowlands, who devours the text to transform it into a living, visceral, and absolutely unpredictable catharsis. It is raw cinema that does not seek easy applause, but forces you to look at what character you have invented for yourself to survive day to day. Imagine being sent to a planet stuck in a perpetual Middle Ages with only one rule. You possess the technology of a god, but you can only observe. You cannot stop executions, you cannot feed the starving, and you are forbidden to intervene when that society decides to hunt down and exterminate anyone who tries to think, read, or write. This is the moral torment that gives the title to Hard to Be a God. Its director, Alexei German, literally gave his life for this work. He dedicated 15 years of total obsession to sculpting every frame, passing away right before he could see it released in theaters. What he left us is a visceral experience that gets into your bones. The camera floats like an invisible witness through the fog, the mud, and the rain, erasing any distance to force you to look human decadence straight in the eye. But the true weight of the film does not lie in its physical violence, but in the gaze of its protagonist, a scientist trapped in the worst of hells, which is having the power to save a world and being forced to watch its destruction in complete silence. It is a savage monument to the horror of ignorance, the definitive testament of a genius whose work, hidden in the shadows, already belongs to eternity. Making the sequel to an untouchable masterpiece is usually considered artistic suicide. However, Wim Wenders was not looking to exploit the success of Wings of Desire, but rather to complete his definitive treatise on the human essence. Thus, Faraway, So Close, is born. In the original film, Damiel renounced eternity because he had found his other half. But what about Cassiel? Well, exhausted from being a mute witness to the suffering of others, he breaks all celestial rules and decides to become mortal to save a little girl's life. But of course, he does not have a love to sustain him. He finds himself completely alone amid the chaos and emptiness of modernity. This film feels like a beautiful nightmare, where Cassiel violently collides with the harshness of survival: greed, organized crime, alcohol, and abandonment. If the first one was heaven, this is a purgatory. Here there is the mafia, there are shootouts, there are adventures, there is alcoholism, and there is Willem Dafoe himself. It is a fascinating exploration of how the purity of the spirit becomes irreparably soiled upon coming into contact with urban reality. This entire Twilight atmosphere is enveloped by what is, without a doubt, the greatest song in the history of U2. A heartbreaking track that was born by and for this film, perfectly capturing that melancholy of the fallen angel who would give anything to stay. But amidst so much free fall, the true beacon of the film is up above. Watching the humans with infinite love stands Nastasia Kinski. She does not act. She embodies the angel she truly is. Forget logic, time, and everything you thought you knew about how a story is told. To enter last year at Marienbad is to accept an invitation to lose your sanity in the most elegant and suffocating labyrinth ever filmed by a human being. The premise is an eternal enigma. In a colossal luxury hotel, a man approaches a woman claiming that they met the previous year in that same place, that they had a romance, and that she promised to run away together today. The problem is that she remembers absolutely nothing. From this collision, Resnais destroys the linearity of time. The geometric corridors, the frozen statues, and the infinite mirrors merge into a loop where the past, the present, the dream, and memory coexist in the same frame. What makes this work an unavoidable peak of the seventh art is its ability to drag you into a pure mental state. Resnais does not want you to understand the film as if it were a logical puzzle. He demands that you lose yourself in it. It is a dark game of seduction about how we manipulate our own memories to survive, or how desire is sometimes capable of rewriting reality. Do not look for rational answers. It is cinema transformed into a labyrinth of the human psyche. Have you ever been surrounded by people in a big city and suddenly felt a suffocating loneliness? That emptiness has a first and last name: Michelangelo Antonioni. The eclipse is the definitive autopsy of modern society, a cold mirror that shows us how social masks and the noise of civilization have stripped us of the capacity to love and connect with others. The story follows Vittoria, a young woman who begins an affair with a cynical and hyperactive stockbroker played by Alain Delon. The romance seems inevitable, but beneath the surface of their encounters, in a Rome of alienating and modern architecture, there is no passion. There is an insurmountable disconnection. The characters touch each other, but they feel nothing. However, what elevates this film to the category of a deity is its final stretch. Antonioni makes a directorial decision so radical, so demented, and so far ahead of its time that it forever altered the rules of cinematic language. A groundbreaking climax that leaves you with a frozen heart, forcing you to look directly into the abyss of urban loneliness. When the screen fades to black, it will take you days to process the conceptual punch that this genius has just delivered in the final minutes. When a mind completely breaks after a traumatic breakup, there are no melancholic dialogues or deep reflections. There is chaos, paranoia, and a brutal loss of identity. And absolutely no one has captured that fracture with the ferocity of Andrzej Żuławski in Possession. In the number 9 spot, I already told you about the dementia of this director. Here, that same madness abandons the stars to lock itself within the 4 walls of an apartment in a cold, grey Berlin, split in 2 by the wall. The film drags us into the infernal divorce process between Anna and Mark, played to the absolute limit by Isabelle Adjani and Sam Neill. Żuławski channeled the rage of his own real-life separation and decided to materialize it on screen. He uses the codes of horror and the grotesque not to give you cheap jump scares, but to give physical form to guilt and resentment. The point of no return arrives in the legendary subway corridor sequence. What Isabelle Adjani does in those 3 minutes is not acting. It is a full-blown exorcism, a sacrifice in front of the lens that turns your stomach and paralyzes you in your seat. Possession is a brutal and extremely uncomfortable miracle. It completely transcends the horror genre to become a metaphysical catharsis. Pain has never been filmed as beautifully as in Contempt. It all starts with Paul, a writer who corrupts his own ideals to adapt Homer's Odyssey to the whims of a cynical producer. As Paul trades his dignity for money, his wife, played by an unattainable Brigitte Bardot, begins to look at him differently. There are no huge arguments, no dramatic betrayals. It is the slowest, most real, and painful disconnection a camera has ever captured. But this is not a story of falling out of love. It is the capturing of that precise moment when you wake up from self-deception. The moment when you see, with devastating clarity, that you were never in love with your partner, but with an ideal that you yourself projected. A purity that does not belong to him, but to that real love that has not yet appeared. Because true love does not break. What crumbles here is only the mirage. And do not let the fact that the film is by Jean-Luc Godard scare you. I myself detest him, but here a miracle occurred. It was the only time in his life that he had to swallow his ego because there were producers watching him, and the result was his ultimate masterpiece. He did it by locking us in an apartment for a third of the film, in a suffocating choreography of mute reproaches that changed the language of cinema forever. Its visual beauty is unbearable. Godard moves this shipwreck to the radiant light of Capri and the Villa Malaparte, where human pettiness clashes with the eternal indifference of the Greek gods. All wrapped in the score by Georges Delerue, whose strings seem to weep for what the characters no longer can. Even the legendary Fritz Lang appears here, playing himself, wandering like a ghost representing the pure dignity of art against modern vulgarity. It is, quite simply, one of the peaks in the history of cinema, a jewel that remains intact and that, from today on, will become part of the way you see the world. You now have a map of 10 works capable of changing the way you see cinema. The rest is up to you. Dare to watch one from this list, because you just might find your new favorite movie. If you want this to become a series, support it with a good like and subscribe. Thank you for joining me this far, and see you very soon.